والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum everybody. Eid Mubarak. Hope you're doing well, inshallah. Can't believe it's already been 1 month or 1 week since Ramadan, subhanAllah. We are definitely, time just doesn't stop, subhanAllah. So we ask Allah to accept and to give us all the benefits of that month, inshallah, and allow us many more, inshallah. So we were on a chapter that we started last week, 2 weeks ago. Last week we did the farewell Ramadan series. So 2 weeks ago, last time we met, we started this chapter. And this chapter is a really, I sort of prefaced it. I said it's an awkward chapter, not because of the material, but because of the demands that the material makes of us as people. So the chapter is actually called the chapter on mending relations between people. So it focuses, of course, on the different interpersonal dynamics, the challenges, the friction that can exist. And sometimes these things are really just a matter of, a person's essence, meaning that it's really not even the case that two people who have friction are necessarily bad people. But sometimes there's dispositions, right? There are certain natures that people have that they carry that can just, rub somebody the wrong way. If somebody's a spender and someone's a saver, and those two people are friends, there's nothing inherently wrong with being a spender or a saver, right? The Quran actually mentions both positions, right? In extreme, of course, extreme spending, extreme saving, that can be an issue. But within reason, those are both two normal human dispositions. But if those two friends go out to eat, then one person's going to be ordering water, the other one's going to be ordering all kinds of fancy drinks and all the appetizers, and then the person, when it comes time to split the bill, you're going to have a little bit of an issue, right? And so it's not even the case necessarily that when the two people have friction in their relationship, that one is distinctly or definitively right and the other one is wrong. But nevertheless, the goal that we have and the aspiration is to always be people of Islah, people who mend relationships. So the chapter talks about, number one, the importance of mending relationships, and number two, how, the methodology. How can a person go about trying to mend relationships? So we talked about this 2 weeks ago, but I want to continue a little bit about the virtue and the nature of how some of these amazing people in our history, they saw the value and the importance of bringing people together and mending relationships. So one narration, and this narration is a historical narration, but at the same time, we have a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ that emphasizes the same point. Abu Ja'far, he narrated that a person came up to Hussein bin Ali, radiallahu anhuma. Of course, Hussein bin Ali is the grandson of the Prophet ﷺ, the son of Ali and his daughter Fatima, radiallahu anhuma. And so this person came up to Hussein bin Ali, and he asked him for help. The only issue is that at the time, Hussein was in i'tikaf. I'tikaf is when a person spends the last 10 nights of Ramadan in the masjid. They check in as a resident of the masjid, and they, in order to perform i'tikaf, they are not supposed to leave for any reason. And so really, unless you have some really, serious need, you should not leave your i'tikaf. So that's what we call a sunnah i'tikaf. Sunnah i'tikaf is when a person checks in on the night, right, of the 20th, meaning before Maghrib on the 20th, and they leave when Ramadan is officially over at Maghrib of the 30th or the 29th, depending on when the moon is sighted. So he's in i'tikaf. So somebody comes to him and says, hey, I need help, but you're asking somebody who is kind of stuck, right? Meaning he can't leave the masjid to help you. And so Hussein, who is the grandchild of the Prophet ﷺ, he responds in a very polite way. He says that, I would love to help you. I would love to help you. But unfortunately, I'm in a state of i'tikaf, and I can't help you. So then the man went to Hassan. And Hassan, the son of Ali, again, the other grandson, the older grandson of the Prophet ﷺ. And he said to him that, I need your help. I need your help. And Hassan left i'tikaf and went to help him. So the man said that, what's interesting, as they were walking together, the man said, you know, I went and I asked your brother, and I asked him for help, and he refused to leave I'tikaf, but you left I'tikaf. So he's kind of like, I'm not trying to start beef, right? Which brother is better? But I'm not trying to start anything, but I'm just curious, like, why is it that when I asked him, he said no, but I asked you, you said yes. Are you like less religious than him? Are you, what is it? What is it that you know that he doesn't know? And so he said, honestly, the man said, I didn't even want to ask for your help because of the answer your brother gave, but I was in such dire need. Hassan said, I would rather take care of any need of my brother or sister than even do i'tikaf for not 10 days, but one whole month. I would rather do that. And the Prophet ﷺ, it's very possible that if Hassan heard a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, because he himself, the Prophet of Allah, said, it is more beloved to me to help take care of somebody's needs than to do i'tikaf in my masjid for one whole month. And if you think about it, you know, you're thinking about, okay, that statement sounds powerful, but what does it actually mean? It actually means that when it comes to taking care of each other, that is its own form of worship. Taking care of people is not like a side thing. Oh, I'm worshiping Allah. Let me pause my worship to go take care of people. No. Taking care of somebody is its own form of worship. And i'tikaf, doing the residence of the masjid for the last 10 nights, is not something that's an obligation. You know, you can't say, oh, I want to pray Fajr, but I'm going to go take care of my brother's need first, and then miss Fajr. No, this is talking about not the obligations, but the things that are supererogatory, the things that are extracurricular. I'tikaf being one of them. So what does this mean? This means that ultimately, when it comes to maintaining relationships and taking care of each other, it should not be low on our list. And oftentimes, the unfortunate reality is, when it comes to favors, I was just literally texting somebody today. I said, can I ask you for a favor? And as I was texting it, I apologized. I was like, I'm really sorry, but I need to ask you for a personal favor. And he responded, he said, don't apologize. Like, what can I help you with? And the reality is that as believers, as Muslims, when people come and ask us for favors, we should not feel burdened, we should feel blessed. That I'm able to actually do this act of service to you, which is inevitably going to bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, if somebody comes to you and brings you their need, they're obviously in a state of comfort with you. They feel close enough. They feel intimate enough with you as a person that they can be vulnerable and tell you that they need help with something. It's not everybody that can go to anybody and say, I need help. So you are already now an elected person. And then that person didn't only see you as capable, but they saw you as generous enough and kind enough to be able to offer your services that they wouldn't feel rejected immediately. So anytime somebody comes to you and asks you for something, instead of seeing it as a burden or a nuisance, ask yourself, what is it about me that Allah put in the heart of this person? That this person saw me even as worthy of asking. Because they could have asked probably 10 or 20 other people, but they actually came to me to ask. And so, Hussein bin Ali, he, because he was younger, perhaps, made this very clear distinction that, you know what, I'm in the masjid, I can't help you. But his older brother, I'm not trying to give props to older siblings here, but you know, this is one of your evidences. His older brother was able to say, you know what, I understand that the value and the opportunity here is great enough that it's actually something that I would take advantage of before even my own personal worship. And we have another narration of the Prophet ﷺ where he says something similar to this. You know, when the Prophet first arrived to Medina, peace and blessings be upon him, one of the things that is memorialized is the first address he ever made publicly. I want you guys to think about this for a second, okay? Rewind your mind and go back to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ leaving Mecca, leaving his hometown, after being there for 53 years, okay? And now he's arriving to Medina, and he is the new leader of Medina, the city. And the city is not what we think of today. When you think of Medina today, it's beautiful, it's peaceful, it's illuminated. When he arrived, it was a city that was not known for these things. In fact, it was a city that had some pollution and things like that. It wasn't really a destination that people would look forward to. So when the Prophet ﷺ arrived to Medina, this is like a new era. It's like a new, it's a new generation of what Medina could become. And he arrives, and he's on the outskirts of the city, and people are literally waiting for him. And they're waiting for him on the outskirts, and we all know the famous Tala al-Badru alayna, like the nasheed that they were reported to have sent when he arrived. And he says this address, the first statement that he ever utters to the new population that he is now in charge of. What does he say? He says 4 things. Number 1 is he tells everybody, Afshu salam. So he stands there with his beautiful face, and he says, Afshu salam, which means what? Spread peace. Spread peace. 2 things. Number 1, as Muslims, we're supposed to spread peace with each other. And we're supposed to say salam to one another. In fact, I don't know if you guys know this, but one of the signs of the impending arrival of the Day of Judgment is that Muslims will only say salam to people that they know. Which, if you think about it, yeah, I got a lot of right? Which, if you think about it, like, yeah, it's pretty nuts, right? Like, if you think about Ramadan, Eid, like, they will only, it's a sign of the Day of Judgment. The Hadith tells us one of the signs of the hour meaning the last hour, is that people will only give salam to Muslims that they know. And they won't give salam to Muslims that they don't know. Okay? Now, you can ask yourself, why is that a sign? Allah knows best. But what we understand from this is that this is not a praiseworthy trait. It's not like, okay, this is something we want to, no, this is of course something we don't want to do. So spreading peace, literally, if we think about it from the perspective of community, what it means is that one of the things that we have to do in order to really have community is we have to be willing to talk to people that we don't know. We have to be willing to say salam to people that we don't know. And honestly, low-key, this is one of the reasons why we have the coffee shop. The coffee shop is a hack. It's just easier to say salam to somebody when you're both drinking a sugary, milky, warm drink. Really, there's a reason why we say in English, break bread. Like when you want to catalyze conversation between 2 people, you're like, let's go get something to eat. Food is like this universal catalyst for relationships. So, I mean, if you try talking to somebody in Ramadan, like when you're fasting, like, no one's interested, right? So, the reality is that this salam is something that the Prophet ﷺ, he commanded. Number 1, give salam to each other. But the second understanding of that same command is that, and it kind of fits, is that be a person, afshu salam, that by your very presence you spread peace. Right? And it goes exactly into mending relationships. We are peacemakers. I'm not trying to drop a pun here about the Israeli press conference. We are actual peacemakers. I know he said that. We are actual peacemakers. We are people that when we find situations, when we find drama, when we find tension, Allah says in the Quran, فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا. He tells us when 2 groups are fighting, وَإِنْ طَائِفَتَانِ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ اقْتَتَلُوا فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا. When 2 groups of believers are fighting, make peace between them. Make peace between them. Wow. It's your job and my job when we see 2 groups is not to sit there and be like, oh yeah, what's the tea on that? Tell me more. Oh really? Oh this and that. The goal always, and again, there could be different strategies. Maybe there is a venting session that has to happen. Maybe there is details that have to be shared. Okay, that's fine. But the goal of every conversation that we have regarding 2 people should always be what? To leave them in a better place than we were when they started. Right? In Islam, the verb salah, islah, means to make something better. We don't do fasad. Fasad means to ruin something. We improve something. Whenever a Muslim is in any situation, everybody should feel like the whole situation was elevated. And that's what the Prophet did to Medina. When he got to Medina, it went from being Yathrib, which was a place that was known for disease and for being a dismal, dingy place, and it became what? Madinatul Munawwara, the illuminated city, which now, till today, you don't even have to go there. If you look at pictures, you're like, that place is amazing. Right? May Allah invite us all. So number 1, Afshu Salam. Then, not a coincidence, he says, وَطَعِمُ الطَّعَامِ. Feed people food. We just said that. Feeding food is one of the ways, it's the bridge to the heart. Right? It's not just for men, as they say, right? The way to a man's heart is through his stomach. I think the way through anyone, to get to anyone's heart is through your stomach. Right? Food is this interesting language of love. It communicates appreciation. If somebody takes time to prepare a drink or a meal for somebody, it communicates almost without language this level of intimacy, right? That you are now in my house. My mom, one of the things she would always do whenever we used to get the missionaries that would come to our front door, they always had this face of regret when they saw my mom. Because they were like, have you heard about the good word? She's like, yeah, I have, come in. And she would invite them in, and she would feed them, and she would give them food and drink and everything. And she's like, before we talk, you have to eat. And they're like, what? And she's like, don't worry, it's not poison, ha ha ha, which is a funny joke before 9/11, right? And then after that joke stopped, she's like, this is, safe or halal or whatever. And then after I'm not joking, I was there as a child, I remember numerous times, that after they had eaten and they had drank, it was almost as if they forgot what they came for. Like, when you feed somebody food, the heart now, like all the defenses are gone, all the mechanisms gone. And they were actually more curious about hearing, for example, stories about Egypt or something, where my mom was from, right? So feeding people food is one of the most absolutely slept on, absolutely just overlooked solutions to so many different problems. There's a reason why in our tradition in Islam, when somebody is sick, when someone has experienced loss, when they're grieving, it's sunnah to cook for them. Because there's an alchemy behind taking care of somebody by feeding them nourishment. There's an alchemy. You make dua for their soul and you feed their body with food. And in that combination, there's this love that is forged between the two of you. Right? When you want to show someone you love them, you pay for their meal. Right? This is something that it's normal, it's habitual, and we can't lose it. We can't lose it. Now, many of us are thinking like, oh, this is cultural. No, it's not culture. Your culture learned from Islam. Like, Islam was not informed by your culture. Your culture was dominated by Islamic tradition. And because of that, in the Middle East, in Southeast Asia, right, in Central Europe, and all these places that have Muslim heritage, we find the same traits. Feeding people, taking care of food. Why? Because the religion informed our cultures of these things. Okay? So, he says, and then next, the third thing, right, he said four things. The third, wasilul arham. Keep the family ties. Make sure that you don't, break apart families, which is obviously huge. And then the fourth one, and this is the one that I want to focus on. He says, وَصَلُّوا بِاللَّيْلِ وَالنَّاسُ نِيَامٌ. Or وَصَلُّوا فِي اللَّيْلِ وَبِاللَّيْلِ وَالنَّاسُ نِيَامٌ. Pray in the night while people are sleeping. And this is an interesting one because, number one, it's the longest one. Out of all the advices, the first few words, just a couple words. This is like a sentence. Number two is that it's the only one that is explicitly worship. In the first one, it's say salam to people. Number two, it has to do with feeding people food. Number three, it's about being a good family member. These are not like specifically worship things. The fourth one mentions prayer, but it only mentions prayer in the condition or under the condition that people are not being neglected by you because of your prayer. You have to pray while people are what? Sleeping. Now, this isn't talking about the 5 daily prayers. This is talking about not the obligation. This is talking about extra stuff. What does this mean? In the same way that Al-Hussein made that mistake, and Al-Hassan corrected him by saying that i'tikaf is not more important than taking care of people, the Prophet ﷺ says a person should never ever use their prayer or their religion as a reason to ignore the needs of their community. They can't do it. وَصَلُّوا فِي اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّاسُ نِيَامٌ. You have to pray, sure, but don't ever say, I'm too busy to help you because I'm praying. Right? So when it comes to being of service to people, you can be of service to them and you can still be increasing your relationship with God in that service to people. Khidmah, service, is one of the ways that we increase our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? In another narration, very similar, Al-Hassan, he went to go see Thabit al-Bunani so that he could accompany him to help somebody. So he went to go ask Thabit, hey, we got to help this guy. Can you come with me? Thabit was in i'tikaf. He was in this devoted state these last 10 nights. He said, I'm in i'tikaf, I'm sorry. Hassan said to him, fulfilling the need of your brother or sister is better than i'tikaf for not only a month, but he said an entire year. The entire year. So now I want us all to go back. Okay, you guys ready for the guilt trip? There's a pun there because we're going on a trip. All right, so go back and think about all the needs that people have asked us about that we've been capable of. There are some that you're incapable of. Like if somebody asks you for something and you're not capable of it, that's not on you. Think about all the requests and the favors that people have made that you were capable of, but they were left undone simply because of laziness or of selfishness. And go back and think about that. And I want you to think about the feeling and the reason and the thought behind why. Sometimes, I don't know if you guys have this problem or if it's just me, but to be vulnerable for a moment, sometimes our default answer is no. It's like no until proven yes. And so if somebody says, I need something, and you're like, you don't even know what it is. It could just be like, I need a high five. And you're like, I don't know. It's like, so, and it reminds me, I already told stories about my daughter who's like, her first word was no. It's not a joke. It actually was no. Sometimes the nafs is so in control of the decision of everything that if somebody comes and simply says, I need a favor, it's almost like we don't even give them the decency or respect to hear what the favor is, to genuinely weigh it and to see, can I help them before we answer? And then even when we answer, subhanAllah, if you can't really do it, there's a way to let somebody down that doesn't let them feel isolated and alone. I used to work at Apple when I was in college. And I remember, you could really find religious tradition anywhere. And I was working there, and I remember like our manager used to tell us, and of course this is for like capitalistic purposes, so it's not like spiritually enlightening, but it is interesting. He used to say, whenever a customer asks you for something, never say no. And I was like, how does that work? What if they ask for something that's impossible? And he goes, there's always a way to get them from what they're asking to where you can get them, even if it's not what they're asking. And I remember being like, that's like a Jedi mind trick. It's like Yoda. And he always used to say, no is like the greatest deflator in any relationship. No is always the greatest deflator. Even if you can't do it, there's an answer that still says you can't do it, but it doesn't say no. So I used to ask him, what kind of answers would you give? He would say, subhanAllah, so smart. If somebody comes to you and says, hey, can you help me with this? And you can. You say, I can't, but I know someone who can. So he's like, do you see how you're just like doing this verbal jujitsu? You're not saying no, you're saying, actually, there's someone better. Or you can say, hey, can you help me with this? I can try. But I think you might be better off if we get this person who's an expert to help you. Like, hey, AbdelRahman, can you help me build IKEA furniture? I can try. Or, right, I can call my friend who's really good at it, and I'll sit here and I'll make you guys food and lemonade while you do it, right? You're not saying no, although you are saying no, but the way in which you are redirecting the request is not leaving anybody feeling hurt or isolated, alone. Okay? Another example of this beautiful culture, this ethic of our religion of Islam, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, I prefer to feed a brother of mine one bite of food. I prefer to give my brother one bite of food than to give a dirham to a person who needs it. And then he said, I prefer to give a dirham to a brother of mine who needs it more than to give 10 dirhams to a random person that I don't know. I prefer to give 10 dirhams to a person that I don't know rather than to give 100 for the sake of some large cause. So ajib. He starts from the micro and he doesn't go to the macro. Now again, in our era, we're like, well, what about the impact? What about the impact? Right? Whenever we talk about donors, it's always like, what's your impact? The Prophet ﷺ here is saying, when it comes to impact, there's much more than meets the eye. Because you could give $1,000 to like St. Jude's, and they do great work, no doubt. Free treatment for children who are going through cancer, like amazing. That's a beautiful mission. We would all support something like that. But what the Prophet ﷺ is saying here, and this is very beautiful, especially because now we just did our zakat and zakat al-fitr, is that there's more to being a person of charity than simply giving charity. It's about making sure that your charity actually transforms and changes, right? And so when we look at what we're giving, again, it's easy to throw a large check into the pot of like a large organization. And alhamdulillah, Allah rewards all of it. Notice how the Prophet didn't say, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. He's not making inkar here at all. Inkar in Arabic means he's not rebuking or refusing or making negative. No. Every one of them is good. He's just saying, I prefer that if I had a list of choices, if I had to rank all of them, my number one preference would be that if I saw my neighbor was hungry, would be to cook him a meal. More than writing a check to St. Jude's. Or, if there was somebody on the road who I knew who was passing by who needed money, to give it to them, more than writing a check to a large organization. You get the point? And the reason why he's saying this again is because why? When you do this, the relationship between the two of you, what happens? When you feed somebody and they're hungry, what happens the next time you see them? They may not be hungry anymore, but what memory is living in their heart when they look at you? Forget them. Let's say, what about when you were in need? Anyone here ever been in need before? Like deep need of something? A contact, a connection, an email, whatever. And you met someone who gave it to you, and they hooked you up, whether it was professionally or romantically. So, they got you your job, or they got you married, whatever it might be, right? May Allah Ta'ala give us everything that's good, inshallah. Okay. Point being, someone who made an impact in your life. And the next time you saw them, how did you feel? Like, maybe you were in a group of people, and you couldn't just hug them, but you were like, I am indebted to you. I'm indebted to you. There's no way I can repay you. So, what the Prophet is saying here is that even in moments of good, like charity, there are hierarchies based on what? The relationship that is created from the help that you're giving. If you can help people that you know, it's actually better than helping people you don't know. Not because one of them is inherently better, but because the relationship that you two build after you help them is one that is unbreakable. That bond now is so solid. And there is something to be said about the awkwardness that we feel in helping people that we know. Meaning, if someone that we know is in need, it's almost like we don't want to acknowledge it, and we don't want to even be there to remediate it, because there's maybe a little bit of ego at play, or want to preserve their dignity. But I'll tell you something. There's a way to preserve someone's dignity, and there's a way to preserve and not damage their ego while still helping them. There's a way. Abu Hanifa, there's a really funny story about Abu Hanifa. Abu Hanifa, a great scholar of religion, his mother used to have a lot of questions. And you would think, if somebody had a lot of questions and their son was a great scholar, who would they ask? They would ask their son. If a person had questions and they wanted to, think about it this way. If there's a person who wants to learn how to play basketball and they're related to LeBron, who are they going to ask to teach them how to play basketball? They're going to ask LeBron, right? So Abu Hanifa is a scholar. His mom has questions. Natural connection. Mom asked me. No. Abu Hanifa's mom, in classic Arab mom fashion, had a preference other than her own son. She liked another scholar. Here's the problem. That scholar didn't know as much as Abu Hanifa. So his mom would go and ask the scholar the question. The scholar would say, good question. Let me go do some research. The scholar would then go and ask Abu Hanifa, what's the answer? Abu Hanifa would say, the answer is this. The scholar says, thank you. Go back to Abu Hanifa's mom and would say, the answer is this. She's like, you're so smart. I wish my son was like you. I wish my son was like you, right? And Abu Hanifa sat there and he's like, and he dealt with it. This is, again, it's a story of sincerity. But the behind the humor of the story is a major lesson, which is that as humans, we sometimes don't want to engage with the awkwardness of close relationships, family members, friends, etc. We know that awkwardness can be a repellent. But look at how Abu Hanifa did not let his ego get in the way of helping his own mom. His mom needed the help. So some people, especially when you get older, there's this thing that we say, in our 30s, I'm taking care of my parents. And it is a good thing. It's a good thing. Everybody should take care of their parents. But is there a way to say it where it's a little bit more dignified for our parents? Did our parents take care of us and they're like, yeah, I took care of my kids. Yeah, you're supposed to take care of your kids. If anyone comes in here and is like, I took care of my kids, you're like, okay, no clap for you, no applause. Sit down, you're in timeout, right? Nobody should walk in and celebrate that they're doing something that they should be doing. But when we get to our 30s and 40s, we proclaim to our friends, yeah, I helped take care of my parents. There's a way to do that, which we should do that, in a way that's more dignified for them. That doesn't make it seem like they're on the receiving end of charity, right? There's so many ways, and I've met people that have done this in such creative ways. I've met people that have had friends who own companies hire their dad and said, I'm going to pay his salary. So my dad feels fulfilled. I mean, this guy's getting the IRS involved now. You know what I mean? Like, this is no longer like a one-to-one. Now he's got to go to Uncle Sam. But why? Because he's like, I want to preserve my dad's honor. Right? There's a thought that has to go into it. Now again, our generation, what are we going to say? That's inefficient. Man, enough with the efficiency. Enough with the productivity if it destroys our spirit. What's the point? Right? And some of you are nodding your heads because you know that sometimes you're telling your parents, Mom, Dad, let me just take care of it. And they say no, and you're like, what's the problem? Let me take care of it. There is a human honor that everybody carries. And we cannot stop taking care of people just because the first obstruction is the ego that we all carry, right? So back to the point. The point is, when it comes to mending relationships, we have to be thoughtful about being creative and making sure that whatever we do, it keeps the bond together between us, right? This is why it could be more beloved to Allah. It could be more beloved to God to take care of your sibling than it could be to take care of like 10 strangers. Because the relationship you have with them is thicker than blood, right? But oftentimes we ignore the sibling for the stranger because it's a little bit less uncomfortable. May Allah Ta'ala help us. Okay, next narration. Abu Umama, he narrated that Umar ibn Khattab, he asked for a new shirt and he put it on. So, getting new clothes. Everybody loves new clothes. It's one of the sweetness of life, right? Getting something new. Eid is a good example. We get Eid clothes, we celebrate it, we wear them, right? Everyone takes pictures. GRWM, Eid Day. So Umar Khattab, he says, Abu Umama, he narrates, that Umar got a new shirt and he placed it on. He goes, I don't even think it reached past his clavicles, right? His collarbone. It was basically not even covering his chest and torso yet. He just kind of put the headpiece over his head and it was sitting right here. Before I heard him say, praise be to Allah for the one who clothed me and gave me something to beautify myself in my life. And then he said, he looked around and he walked out and he saw people and he said, do you know why I said what I said? They said, why? He goes, I saw one time that the Prophet of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, asked for a new garment. Someone gave it to him. He did the exact same thing. He put it around his head, he put it on his shoulders, and it had not reached past his shoulders, except that he said, praise be to Allah, the one who gave me clothing to beautify myself. And he said something similar to what I said. Yeah, I'll get it, inshallah. So then he says, sorry, I'm just trying to translate it really quick. So then he says, by the one who has my soul in his hand, I swear by God, any person who puts on a new garment and says similar to what I have said, and then takes the worn out garment which he removes and gives it to another person to wear, only for the sake of Allah, this person will be in the protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as long as there is a single thread left, Okay, so what is this hadith now talking about? This hadith is actually speaking about the nature of anything that we have can be useful in mending relationships with people. Anything. I don't know if you guys, hopefully the kids are okay back there. That's why we installed the last one, but hopefully they're okay. Hopefully they're safe. I just saw the Monopoly box fall. That's fun then, mashallah. So, let me ask you something. How many of you remember your first apartment and your first set of furniture and your first stages? Maybe you're there right now. Okay, and that's great. How many of you were on the receiving end of furniture that someone else, when they were moving, they were like, oh, I gotta get rid of my stuff, let me help you out with it, right? And for them, it was kind of also like embarrassing. They're like, no, it's not good. And you're like, no, this is perfect. It looks so good, especially the price tag, $0. That's the best part, right? That's the best part. So it's interesting here because we have two dynamics in our religion. Number one is that charity it can be very creative. It doesn't always have to be money. Somebody could use something or need something, and you could be a person that's able to provide that for them, like furniture, really, or clothing, or something that is new to them, right? New to them, new to that person. Number two, we have the other side of the spectrum, which is that when we give charity, or when we are charitable and give gifts, we should make sure that that gift is not synonymous with like trash. So Aisha, radiallahu anha, she used to put perfume on her charity. Whenever she would give charity, she would perfume it. Her nickname was Umqib because she would try to make decadent whatever she gave as a result of believing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was the one who was watching over that transaction. And she didn't want it to be dingy and messed up. And so many of us probably have been a part of growing up or these clothing drives, and we've seen the best and the worst of Muslim clothing drives. We've seen it where it was almost like more of a garbage pickup day, where people were dropping off clothing in trash bags, and they were not washed, and they were dirty. It was frankly embarrassing, right? And many relief organizations that call for clothing, you'd be shocked to find out how much they have to throw away, because it's quite frankly not in a shape or in a position to be given to anybody in a dignified manner, okay? But then, there are other ways that a person, this doesn't mean that we just now throw away clothes that we don't wear anymore. But what it means is that our mindset has to be, as long as something is dignified and is beautiful, this can actually be, I may not have money to give, but I might be able to give somebody something else that's not liquid cash. And there's actually a really beautiful example of this. These girls here at the seminary, they do something called secondhand suit. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's this really cool project. So I guess Muslim women's modest wear is expensive. I guess. I don't know, right? And so one of the challenges, of course, is that people want to dress modestly and fashionable, but they don't want to be broke. And so what these girls do is they actually collect donated Muslim women's fashion, and they make sure that it's clean and it's nice, it's presentable, it's not like torn. And then they price it at like, I think $5 or something. It's like a ridiculously low price, right? It's like Cutham's thrift store. And it's like really, really cheap. But the stuff is really nice. I remember I was walking through here with my wife one time, and she was like, what is this? And I said, this is their like secondhand suit. And she's like, this stuff is nice. And I was like, yeah. That's on the price. I was like, it's really nice, But this is kind of communicating what Allah is doing here and what the Prophet ﷺ taught us here, which is when you get something new, it is the perfect opportunity for you to rethink how much you have. Because what you got should easily now replace something that you have, and what you have somebody else could need. You're no longer in a position of need for it. If you had a shirt and then you got a shirt, you no longer need the second shirt that you had before. And as long as it's in a good shape and it's fashionable and it's fine and clean, there is somebody out there that if you clean it, you get it dry clean, you press it, you make it nice, that would be grateful to have that shirt. And especially because you already ate the cost of it. You already bought it for whatever it cost, and now if you present it to them as a gift and you know that they're in need of it, they would be more than grateful to take it, right? So clothing is one category, but we also have, there's a ton of stuff. My in-laws, my wife's sister, she moved with her husband, newlyweds, mashallah, first place, and we had a couch that we didn't need anymore. They came and took it, and they loved it, and they do these like secondhand things, they paint the legs, they do all this stuff, and it looks brand new and it's beautiful. And the best part was, it was when we didn't need, it was when they needed, and it was given without any sort of transaction, and everyone's happy, and hopefully most of all, Allah's happy. And so the reality is, as a Muslim, the second methodology for mending relationships is that we never see our material belongings as being something that should ever be more important than that relationship. Allah says in the Quran, "Al-hakum wa-takathur." Your obsession with gathering things is going to destroy you, right? But through your distraction, it's going to cause you to veer off track. Al-haqqa wa-takafur, hatta zurtum al-maqabir, until you die, until you go to the grave. Interestingly, subhanAllah, how this hadith solves that problem is that anytime you buy something new, you should commit to giving away something old. Anytime. And we have this rule for children. Whenever they get a new toy, we say, okay, now pick a toy to give to one of your friends or give to somebody. But we grow out of this rule when we reach an age where we love to acquire more things. But what if we applied this? What if we said, anytime I buy something for myself, I'm going to make sure that I give something to somebody else? And not in a way that's condescending or patronizing, but in a way that's dignified and honorable. So may Allah Ta'ala give us this. So the lesson here really is being comfortable and creative with your charity. And the next narration, the Prophet ﷺ summarizes this beautifully. He says, if someone has 2 shirts, he should clothe someone with one of them. If somebody has 2 shirts, he should clothe another person with one of them. Or he said, gift one of them. Right? You look at the companions, when they first arrived to Medina, some of those who were from the Muhajirun, right from Mecca, they would have this, they gave away everything. I want you to imagine, they gave away their homes, their business, their property, everything. They moved, but they moved with nothing. The clothes on their back, and that was it. So they arrived in Medina, and Medina had the spectrum of people, right? They had the wealthy and the not wealthy and everything in between. And there were some of those who were wealthy in Medina, and those who were not wealthy, and they would prefer to give and to split with these brand new people they'd never met before. In fact, before now, they were almost enemies, right? They were almost sort of at odds with each other. But they arrived in Medina, and all of a sudden now, they're saying things like, let me split my business with you. And to translate for us, I want you to imagine all the money you have, every asset you own, if you liquidate it, if you make everything cash, and whatever that number is, cut it in half and give the check to somebody else. That's what they were saying. So if your net worth was 100,000 or 200,000 or 50,000 or 10,000, they would take that number mentally, and they were prepared. This wasn't a formality. I know Arabs are sometimes over formal, right? You go shopping in Egypt, you're like, how much is it? They're like, take it for free. You're like, oh, thanks. He's like, wait, where are you going? You have to pay. You just take it for free. You're like, what? You think this is a free shop? And you're like, I am so confused right now. They invented gaslighting, right? Egypt, the bodegas of Egypt. You're like, take it for free. Okay, but pay. Okay, well, just leave it. I don't want to buy it anymore, right? This wasn't a weird formal thing. They were genuinely offering it. They were genuinely offering it. Take this, take that. My house, I'll cut it in half. I'll build a wall right down the middle, live in the other half of it. Gee, this is like a different mindset. And again, to us, a little bit perhaps extreme, maybe not compatible right now with how we're living, but that doesn't mean we can't do any of it. Doesn't mean we can't do any of it, right? In the bare minimum, what did the Prophet ﷺ tell us, right? We should always be people that are feeding other people. If there's enough food for, the hadith says, if there's enough food for 2, he said what? There's enough for 3. How beautiful is that hadith? If there's enough for 2, there's enough for 3. If there's enough for 3, there's enough for 4. A Muslim should never have anxiety over food. Ever. If you order food and you see a friend, you should never be like, I have to hide this. You should say what? Come join me. Come join me. Right? Or you hide the good parts, right? You put away, you just leave out like the pita chips. And that's it. Pita chips and hummus. They're like, man, you're eating light. You're like, yeah. And then they leave and you bust out the shawarma, the fries, and everything. The garlic sauce because they left. No, we should never feel anxious. And didn't Ramadan teach us that? I'll never forget, we had a security guard, and I go, hey, you gotta come eat with us. And he goes, no. I don't wanna eat your, like, meaning, I don't wanna eat your food, but he didn't mean like y'all people's food. He meant, I don't wanna eat your food. You've been fasting. I haven't been fasting. He felt bad. And he goes, do you guys have enough? And I looked at him and I go, there's quite possibly no month in the world where Muslims have more food than this month. And I meant it by quantity, like quantitatively, but I also meant it spiritually, meaning we all need less, so we have more. And that's the same with everything. Anyone here have any clothes in their closet they haven't worn in a while? A year? I saw a face palm. Anyone have any clothes in their closet that has a tag on it still? Shoes they haven't worn?
Thank God my mom's on.
Yeah, exactly. The reality is, guys, we all have plenty more than we need. And we may not be able to be charitable with cash, right? That could be an area that's tight, or not. But at the very minimum, we should be able to be people that are charitable in kind, right? Giving gifts and taking care. And this is a trait that people of the past, they had for each other. That's what's out of to do with this. Okay, last narration, inshallah. So Imam Ghazali, he writes about this. It's a long conversation, and we only have like 3 minutes left. But I'll get us started on it. We'll cover it next week, inshallah. So Imam Ghazali says, we did a hard work series on this, so maybe you've heard it, maybe not. You probably haven't. But I can send you the episode. I can post it. He talks about there's 3 levels of generosity. And he says the first level is that you give from your surplus. The second level is that you give equal to what you have. And the third level is you give when you actually need. So far we've talked about giving when you have a surplus. And then we talked about the 2 shirts, give one. That's giving equal. But is it possible for people to be generous when they are in need? And what kind of person must do that? Like what kind of person, what kind of heart can be generous, i.e., thinking of others, when they are truly in need of charity themselves? Urwa ibn Zubayr, he said, when he was talking about Aisha, right? Because he was from the family of Aisha, he said, Aisha gave 70,000 of her wealth in charity, while her own garment had holes in it. 70,000 here could have meant coins or whatever unit she had. She gave 70,000. It also could be a hyperbole that she gave 1 million, right? But the point being is that Aisha was regular in giving charity, even when her own clothing could have used refreshing, meaning could have used either some tailor work or a new garment itself altogether. Okay? This was their culture. This was what made these people so special. Now, what is it about somebody that they can look in the mirror and identify genuine need on their own body, but then give to others? I don't know, because I'm still working on this, to be honest with you. But I've met people that can do this. I got a haircut in San Francisco from a Syrian brother, and his name was Zuhair. And San Francisco, as you know, not an easy place to live, not cheap. And he's cutting hair, and he's trying to make it work. It's Ramadan. This happened like 2 weeks ago. It's Ramadan. It's the first week of Ramadan. And the brother who took me to get the haircut was like, I have to tell you a story about this guy after you're done. And I thought it was going to have something to do with like a haircut. I was like, okay, cool. Ours fade, you know? Like, so he cuts my hair. One of the most beautiful guys. Like one of the most just super sweet. You know, he's Syrian, so he just has that like that honey. And so we're talking, and he's so funny. I told him we're from Texas. I'm like, well, I didn't say from Texas. I'm not from Texas. I'm from Chicago. But I live in Texas. I said I live in Texas. And he goes, are there Amish people there? And I actually was like, I don't think so. I think they're mostly in the Northeast. And he's like, well, I had, you know, that's He's like, he was like, Ajib. He was so astounded by Amish people. He's like, how do they live without electricity? I said, I'm not Amish. I can't tell you. But I'm sure there's like literature on it where you could read or interview one of them or meet somebody. So he was very interesting. After we left the barber shop, the brother that took me there, he said, you know, he's not doing well financially. I said, really? You know, obviously I understand that in San Francisco for a barber to make it probably has to have high volume, many shops, etc. He goes, no, he's not doing well, and you know, he's trying, make rock for him, and you know, all this stuff. And I thought this is so interesting because I couldn't tell for a second. Like he carried himself in such a way where you couldn't even detect need on him. Okay, that's number one. Number two is that despite being in need, the brother continued to tell me, despite not doing well in his own business, he said that this brother and his wife sponsored iftars at the masjid. she cooks, not for like 10, 20, but for 200, 300 people herself. And Syrians, chicken, rice, salad, the whole 9 yards, sweets. And I asked the guy, I said, look, help me do the math, man. You just said he's not doing well. And you shared with me examples, like personal examples. And now you're saying that they're just taking care of others. And where does that money come from? Like, I understand that Allah puts barakah, but tell me, like, what happened? And he said, honestly, I'm too shy to ask. And I thought to myself, when you read narrations like this, Aisha giving, open-handed, even though her own garments are patchy, think of, you read this and you're like, oh, it's because it's Aisha. She's a special person. Like, you read about superheroes, legends. We'll never be like them. There's a barber in San Francisco that's just like this. And that's the whole point, is that there is a state of heart that you can achieve. How, though? Because you have to love generosity more than you love yourself. Generosity gives more pleasure to people like this. Like, they say, like, do you love giving or receiving gifts more? And something weird happens when you get older. When you're a kid, you love receiving gifts. When you get older, you love giving gifts. It makes you happier to see someone else happy than for you to get a gift. Ajib. And this is the ethic that really, if you work on it, you can actually be hungry and give your food away. Right? So we look now, for example, like Gaza, Sudan, we look at these places that are victims of oppression, transgression, and we see, do we have a need? Absolutely. Like everyone in here, we have need. Whether it's financial, whether it's professional, whatever, right? But one of the beautiful things about our religion is that it teaches us never to place our own need in a position of a blinder that causes us to be completely disconnected from the need of other people. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ, he taught us that when you feel that you are in need, go and spend time with people who are in more need than you. We don't like hearing it. We all grew up with the same statement. Oh, you think you have it bad? There's children in XYZ country that have it much worse, right? And we didn't like it, but honestly, it's not a false statement. And maybe if we, instead of repelling the statement, we embraced it and listened to it and really adopted it, it would have actually changed the fiber of our generosity to make us people that would have been people that said, you know what, I can actually pass up on my coffee today, or my meal today, or my shopping trip today, just to make sure that somebody else has clothes. I could use a new shirt, but maybe there's somebody who needs it more than me. And I'll get by. I'll figure it out. And even if I don't, Allah will be with me. Abu Bakr, I love this story, but it makes me cry. Umar, one day, when the Prophet ﷺ is calling for charity, Umar, he decides, you know what? Today is the day I'm going to beat everybody in charity. They would compete with each other. And Umar, he shows up at the Prophet ﷺ, and he says, I'm going to get half my wealth. Half my wealth. And he says it, and the Prophet ﷺ says, Umar, what an amazing thing you've done. He celebrates him, he's happy for him. He says, may Allah accept from you, may Allah bless you, etc., etc. Abu Bakr walks up, and Abu Bakr and Umar kind of had like a brotherly relationship. They would argue and stuff like that. They would kind of outdo each other. And Abu Bakr walks up and he quietly says, Ya Rasulullah, I would like to give a contribution. He says, how much? He goes, all of my wealth. The Prophet ﷺ is shocked. He looks at him and he says, Ya Abu Bakr, what do you have left? What will you have for your family? Abu Bakr, he smiles and says, Allah and His Messenger. That's it. And if they have God and they have you, the money will come. It will be there. It will be there. Right? Now, this is not to make Omar feel bad. Although he did say in the narration, like, seriously? Basically, if you translate it loosely, he's like, really? On the one day where I gained the courage to give half, you give everything? Wow, thank you, right? But think about the heart of Abu Bakr. And now, who is the daughter of Abu Bakr? Aisha. The culture you create, it ripple effects, cascades down. Your friends, your family, your children. This generosity is infectious. It's hereditary. It's passed down. Many of us give in the same way that we saw things being given. because that's how we were modeled for. So this ethic, as much as it sounds like a tertiary thing, it's very, very important. May Allah Ta'ala give us the ability to be generous. And may Allah Ta'ala give us the preference of others, even over ourselves. May Allah Ta'ala allow us to be those who take care of one another instead of trying to only focus on taking care of our own needs. May Allah Ta'ala accept from us and allow us to be those who exemplify all these beautiful statements and these teachings. Ameen, ameen, ya Rabbil Alameen. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Jazakallahu khairan, everybody. Barakallahu feekum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So the adhan for Maghrib just came in. So if you want to head over, inshallah, to the Musalla to pray Maghrib, that'd be wonderful. Barakallahu feekum. I'll see everybody, inshallah. We do have a qiyam this Saturday, by the way. We're trying to keep the qiyam spirit going, so we're going to try to do one every month. So this Saturday night, inshallah, after Isha prayer, we'll have a short talk. Myself, Imam Safi, we'll do our thing here, and then we'll go and we'll pray qiyam in the Musalla. Hope to see you there. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.